Hello there, everybody. Jeremy Rowland again with the 5 Pencil Method team, and today I'm here to wrap up this series on drawing landscapes with part 3 of 3. And we're just going to jump right back in. Yesterday, Daryl left us in the middle of this beautiful alpine landscape, and today we're going to see where he takes it. So stick around.
Hi, glad you could join me today. I thought we'd spend a little bit more time seeing if we could develop this drawing just a little bit further and using the same principles and concepts that I was talking about yesterday as we started constructing this. And it's not for accuracy except for the fact that we want to make sure that we can separate elements. We want to make sure that there isn't too much confusion, even though there's a number of things that we can incorporate into our drawing. And I think it's a great opportunity to demonstrate how we can utilize clean edges and value and separate contours from those clean dimensional lines. Keep from having maybe a coloring book approach to it, but use value instead to help us really see depth and distance and dimension and also, again, keep it from being confusing because it's so easy to just draw a lot of things into a drawing and they just all get lost. So if we can understand how to block the view of something as it's, maybe the edge of a mountain going behind a tree or maybe a fence post blocking our view of the meadow, as we can't see through it. There's all kinds of things that are going on in here. And this wonderful opportunity for us to just demonstrate a little bit about perspective, which is at play in everything we see. Everything we experience has perspective incorporated into it because we have eyes and we have distance. And everything that is on your table has perspective to it, even though it may seem close. If you measured it, with some kind of I guess you could, if you measured it, it'd be the same measurement, maybe if you had something square. But if you're looking at it, everything that's farther away, even on that little short distance, could be a little box, it could be an eraser, it could be all kinds of things. A pencil is still going to taper off into the distance if it's going away from you. And so it's really, I think, even though we see it all the time, I think it's really good to think about and just learn and maybe do it as an exercise, see if we can see it in what we look at and how we're viewing things. And I know some of you were wanting to do something on a scene and wondering, what are the things that I look for in a landscape? Don't have a chance to draw that very often, but I see things that I want to put on paper, and how would I do it to make sure it has clarity and isn't just, again, so confusing that somebody would say, boy, this doesn't make much sense to me. Looks like a bunch of scribbles. So let's go ahead and just see what we can do to start incorporating into this very general drawing that we did yesterday to see if we can bring even more clarity to it. I think you can probably see I started bringing in maybe a darker value here to separate it from the road and the knoll that comes down to that road and the meadow that goes off to the right. There isn't any value in it right now, but then we have a mountain coming from behind, and we talked a little bit about if you do have a scene with mountains or something off in the distance. It doesn't necessarily have to be mountains. It could be different levels of prairie or whatever. Well, you'll have maybe an opportunity to see that, we have a horizon to that, and then we have something beyond that, and we have something beyond that. And we can have that ability to suggest distance by each time we see an edge and we see another expanse of prairie beyond that. We can have another edge to that before it goes to the next expanse until it just disappears over the horizon. But each one of those can be a little different value. And I think you can probably see by the mountains that we have a darker and a lighter and a lighter. If we had another mountain back here, it could be even lighter. So we really want to manage our values well so that they don't end up all being the same thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't have those normal, everyday things we see and not know or recognize how to present them. So you really want to know what pencils to use, how much pressure. That's one of the things about this. I really sketched most of this out with a 4B, which I'd probably never really do, because I love to start with my lighter pencils and have that opportunity for controlling the values so that I can clearly, place something in here so it has a value and depth in it. And I can put some grass and, the different elements that are going to be in there, the fence post, but I can still separate it from this by not getting too dark here. The darker I go with something that probably should be lighter, the darker I'm going to have to go to show that this is separate from it. And it goes on and on. And so I really want to make those decisions later as I see my values developing, see the depth and the contour and all the different things that are so important, the perspective that I'm working on here too. I want to make sure that I'm just thinking about these goals and not just putting something on my paper. Now, I see a lot of things on here that I think are possibly able to be corrected. Like on here, it doesn't make much difference, I guess, but from this perspective, as we're looking this way, as we talked about even with this circle, I remember yesterday we were talking about the pond and being able to visualize what level or what angle would circles on a pond be. If this road was a pond, you can see, you can take a normal circle and just so you can visualize it, you can see what would be the proper level to be able to see those ripples, going on and on and on. And also that they would be closer and closer and closer together as they go off into the distance. As they come closer to us, they would probably be farther apart. But look at how similar that is to the fence post. As we keep going farther and farther away, they get closer and closer. Now, I might have been able to go ahead and even demonstrate it out a little bit more, but there's just many things like that that are opportunities for us to just little tweaks here and there that play such an important part in not causing a contradiction, and so that things are following the same rules, even though there's variance in them, and we can make them unique in their own way as well. Now, see, I have the top of this post. If I was going to use this as the same example and I was trying to find the same plane, we probably wouldn't see that much of the top of the post, except that these are all different and they're split rails, and this one's off to the side this way, and so this one could be rounded that way, and yet I don't want to create where we're going to see the tops of the post all the way along here in the same angle. I just want to find the uniqueness in this and also take into consideration that we have different facets, so some of those tops would be a little different. We have this road where we have this opportunity, just like the meadow going over the edge, and we have this opportunity to have the mountain, the forested mountain coming up from behind it. We have this opportunity here with this road, kind of going up and down, and so we have an opportunity to change a little value here. And so we can show that there's that distance. There's that same thing in play there I was talking about just a moment ago, with even a pasture or a prairie or just farmland or whatever it happens to be, seeing things and the level of the land just go up and down and up and down. And yet, if I could see in and out of this, it would be soft. If I can see in and out of something that seems to almost disappear, it's still a contour and it'll have a soft edge. As soon as I can't see it anymore and it's blocked from my view, I want to be able to have a clean edge. Very important when we're doing scenery and virtually anything. Same thing with a face. If I have a nose blocking part of the cheek, I want to be able to have a clean edge and show that there's that dimension there and there's a separation. If I have a face that is going to be blocking part of an ear, I want to be able to have a clean edge to that face, and so on and so forth. So there's just common things, and that's why I'm saying perspective and some of these principles play out whatever you're drawing. It doesn't make any difference. But I'm going to go to some of the lighter pencils. I wanted to make sure I got it dark enough that you could see it. And I want to maybe first of all take away some of the coloring book lines. And one of the things that I like to try to do is not have a line that I've constructed my drawing with be so dark that it starts telling me how much value I have to put against next to it to make it go away. Because really what I want to do, as often as I can, I want to be able to have an edge to value. In fact, I've drawn this light enough, I think I could probably get this off. I'm going to change the position of this. And sure enough, I can make the changes that I want to make because I decided, well, I want that post a little bit farther away. So let's go ahead and move it over. That's a great thing to be able to do, I'll tell you, because we can't make the right decisions when we're just quickly sketching all the time. And maybe that's not even close, far enough away. I think I'm going to have a little more separation in this. And then sometimes you might put a little bit more value in something that is initially being sketched out, but then I want to be able to tap it back and make sure that I'm not creating something that is going to be like a coloring book. Because the coloring book, even though it has its place, and there's a time and place to have edges like that, I want to be able to have something that's more realistic. Something that has an edge to value and will really take on much more dimension. I think I want this a little higher. So sorry to play with this, but I think it demonstrates the point. I can make alterations. And so that's one of the things that I want to make sure I do. I don't want to come in here and just start getting down close to the point of my pencil. If you follow the 5 pencil method, I like to be able to sweep on and off of the paper so that I can have that tapered end so that it just naturally blends into something if I want it. And it blends away as it goes and the pencil leaves the paper. And then it's a little bit more intense in the middle. Well, I can do short little strokes. I can do longer ones. And I have a curve here, and I didn't do that with this here, but I have a curve here that if I'm really good at putting this stroke down, I can end up by creating gradations. This is a pretty rough paper. I can put gradations by just putting one line next to the other and then gradually getting lighter and lighter and lighter. Well, look at how wonderful that is for being able to show a shadow. I think we talked about that in one of the earlier videos. So having that opportunity to keep from scoring the paper, which is so easy to do, I want to be able to maintain my texture as much as I possibly can, because if I really had to bear down on this with an abrasive eraser, let's say, I would very possibly damage the tooth, and I want to maintain that tooth just as much as I possibly can, because that's going to help me have the same quality there as I possibly can, so that if I redraw this or I wanted to emphasize something, that I'm going to have the same texture as I did as I began drawing. So let's go ahead and just see if we can, let's see, which way would the light be coming? I think we should have maybe established that a little bit more. Let's make this the dark side. So I want to have, this is an HB pencil. I think with all my videos, I think it's usually color-coded. And so it helps you start understanding with all the different brands out there what pencil I may be using. So we can put some of these, even the grain on here if we want to. But probably even still a little bit of a dark pencil. I think it's showing up okay. I could probably, just hopefully go to something that's a little bit lighter. Here's my 4H. My white one is my 4H. The reason we did that again is because there's so many different brands and it got confusing. And so we just went ahead and color coded them. So I go ahead and I paint the pencils just so that everybody knows when I have a white, it's actually a 4H. A yellow one is 2H. A pink one is HB. The green or turquoise one is the 2V. And a black one is the 4B. I guess we just tried to use logic in there because the 4B is the darkest one, and it's the one that's in the set of pencils that I recommend. I think it's plenty dark enough. Otherwise, everything starts getting completely the same. Another reason why I want to regulate what I have as far as my grades of pencil, because I don't want everything going so dark that you can't tell the difference between one thing and another. I love depth, love to be able to create darker shadows, and so I can continue showing dimension regardless of whether it goes into a dark shadow or not. I still have something a little extra to use, so I don't like to use up my darkest value and just reach for something darker and darker, because sometimes, and it's from my experience, sometimes when I'm having to have something published in a book or whatever, at least over the years, the camera or the scanner can only see so dark, and everything becomes black after that. So I like to just back off and really utilize all of the wide range of values that I possibly can, and not just have areas that become all the same or flat. So here we have established our fence posts. We'll have our light, I guess, coming more from this way. So now I have another consistency on here. I have the opportunity to show that that side is a little darker because it's on the shaded side. Let's just do the same thing with the tree. Come in here, and maybe we'll make a branch up in here, and maybe we want to be able to just show that you can only see parts of it through the tree, and so there's a few peekaboo places in here, and it starts adding some interest. I realize it wasn't that way in the drawing or in the photograph. That's fine, but as long as we understand the principles, we can take the opportunity to create something that is quite effective here. I'm going to shade this one a little bit darker. I might possibly get darker later on. These would obviously be darker because they're well within the shade of the leaves in the tree. And so I now can stop and think, well, if I'm going to do that, maybe I should not have that dark edge. So I think maybe I'll cap it off just a little bit. I can put some value in the meadow. I want to make sure that I have enough time, that whatever I do here is going to have the opportunity to, look as something that you can get an idea from. But let's just say the branch comes out here. Well, then which side would it be darker? Even within the shade, you'd probably have a darker place in here. This would probably be the lighter side. And so then around those branches, we would probably be able to do something with some of the darker leaves in here. And again, it's nice to be able to put your pencil on in such a way that you can take something off. And sometimes, just as a general rule, I'll sketch something in and then realize, I want an area that's a little bit brighter. Maybe it's catching the light over on one side, or a group of leaves isn't quite that dark. And so I can come in here and create something like this, and if it gets too busy, let's put a few little isolated ones out here. I don't know how this is going to turn out. We'll just see. But as I'm drawing, sometimes I'll make it a little bolder than I might end up with. Let's put a little more height to this tree where we can have it blocking our view a little bit more. There's a lot of trees that are very uniform, and there's other ones that they may have something clear out here because there's a little bit of a branch that just bent out there. And so sometimes the irregularity can make a difference, but I want to make sure that I'm not creating again so much confusion. This is a completely different texture than I would probably have in the mountain, let's say. And so I want to make sure that the texture, the value, again, the clean edges, even though this is very random and sketchy, I still can make sure that what I end up with has clean edges so that this doesn't all just blend in to the background. And so if I was going to do that, I would probably come in later after I decide what my branches and my leaves are going to be doing, and I would create a value and come up with something that's a clean edge without a line, separating it from the background. And I can gradually work these things up. They don't have to be done right away because, again, sometimes you just don't know. And it's nice to have that control over your value. It's just wonderful to be able to just take your time, see how it's developing, and to be able to increase or decrease something just as you feel like it needs to be. This way, I don't know, I kind of get inspired as I go, and I'll say, well, boy, I would really like this to be shaped like this, or I can go ahead and have this be a little smaller leaves, maybe because it's so far away, like this one. You wouldn't notice those leaves that big. Remember, everything gets smaller as it goes away. So that's just another thing about this. We wouldn't see near as much detail as we get way out here, but we might be able to kind of make a similar texture. It would just be smaller. Just like the fence posts are going to be smaller as they go away. And maybe I can get away with a little bit more of a silhouette. Okay, now if I have enough value in my tree and even in the meadow, let's go ahead and see if we can maybe create just a few things in the meadow. Let's just take this as an example. Look at some of these places that are a little darker, but there's always a wonderful opportunity. Instead of just trying to shade this all in one even value, it's great to be able to show that this actually is just like regular terrain, and there's all kinds of opportunities to start creating maybe a few little places in here, and sometimes it's really good to go ahead and do that with a 2B pencil. Very, very light, but that 2B pencil allows me to get a little bit more value on there because it has a softer lead, a little bit more graphite in there. And so I can gradually be adding the opportunity for more value because of the fact that I have all that graphite. I can now brush it, and I'll show you in just a second. Oh, and then what would happen if we had fence posts over here and a tree that are shaded on this side? Then what would be happening? They would probably be shaded like this as well. And as it got farther away from the fence post, it's probably going to be getting a little more diffused. And how do I know that? That's just the way light works. It's so nice to be able to draw like that too, where everything isn't quite so harsh. Because I'll tell you a little trick. If you want to know how to create a shadow, if we have a shadow on these fence posts, it's very much the same as this. I hope you can see this, because you see how I can just place my pencil on the paper, and you see how that shadow is darker and more defined the closer it gets to the tip where it's actually touching the paper. But as it gets away from that, farther and farther away from the surface that it's shading, it gets lighter and softer. And that's the same thing I can use right here. I can go ahead and even demonstrate that a little bit more by, I'm going to use a clean edge, and I'm going to just create this, and I'm going to gradually get lighter and lighter. And maybe it gets wider. That's the other thing about this. Notice how the shadow gets wider. It's more narrow and more defined down there where it's touching. So it would be the same thing with these fence posts. A little more value, and then it gets a little softer and less defined as we go away. So see how this is kind of blending into the fence post. Look at how quickly I can go ahead and show that because it is in real life going to be just a little bit more intense. I can go ahead now and use that as an opportunity to separate and to bring a reality into here that we may not have had otherwise. So the tree would be the same thing. If I'm going to have a tree over here with a shadow, I'm going to be able to now have that tree give me the opportunity to separate from the post. And I don't want to just make a solid shadow over here, but I can do somewhat the same thing, maybe just a little bit more, put a little what is going to be maybe the texture of the grass, because I can keep playing with that as well. And it's probably going to be a longer shadow. I'm probably going to get way out here. And just for the sake of time and the focus of this, I think it's probably good for me not to get too carried away, but it'd probably be darker. Again, the closer it is to the tree, and the farther away it gets, then it can get a little bit lighter and a little bit lighter. Okay? So now we're starting to really come up with some value here and there that is going to be an advantage, because we don't want to have to just draw in all kinds of value everywhere. Otherwise, the more strokes we take and the more pencil we lay down, the more it can be a little confusing. And so we're always accomplishing more than what we think. Each and every time we do one thing, we want to make sure that it is actually giving us a benefit in several areas. And so what would happen over here? Let's go ahead and just do this quick. Let's make sure that they're going in the same. It would be funny if I had all my shadows coming down a little bit at an angle like this, and yet over here have them come up like this because I wasn't paying any attention. So I really want to be able to have maybe this shadow is going across the road and just starting, and it gets diffused as it gets farther away from the fence post. But still have that same angle. It's not like there's two suns. There's going to be, something different than when we're maybe involved in real life, where we have, more than one light on in a room, or for a photo session, or whatever we're going to do. We could very possibly have more than one light, and that means it's going to be casting more than one shadow. But we still probably are going to do well to define and find out where is the primary light. That primary light is the main one that's influencing everything. We may have some reflective light. We may have something that's going to help add a little bit more contour, because we see maybe there's that reflective light or a lesser light showing from behind something, maybe giving us a little rim lighting. And boy, look how this is already starting to take shape. Let's put a shadow up here if we don't have to worry about it interrupting this. And so if that's the case, then I can come back in here and maybe we can strengthen that edge a little bit. Remember, we're dropping over the edge of that, that meadow, and we're seeing the mountain beyond. Maybe it's too dark. I don't know. I don't want to necessarily make that decision right now. Now that I'm thinking about it, because I have value I want to put in the trees as well. So here's one that's down and out of our sight, a tree, and we don't see the trunk. We can still make that just a little bit more value there. I can always lighten it up. I want to be able to make those assessments. I want to be able to erase whatever I want. That's a wonderful advantage. I just don't want to give up, because I will see things different as I go along. And I want to make sure that I'm always having the option of changing or developing something so that I can keep this separation going. I don't have to worry about it all just running together. Okay, so even though this is farther away, we'll put a little darker side over here, and maybe, just a little bit of a shadow over here. Yeah, it looked kind of lumpy, but still, I think you get the idea probably. Now, overall, I probably want to be able to have my leaves on this side be darker than on the other side. Because again, if we think about this, it's hard sometimes because we see this all broken up with leaves and everything. But this is really, it's almost like hair on a head. Sometimes it's really hard for us to understand that we're still working with a round object, and we will have light affecting it in a certain way. So over here I can have more of a silhouette of the leaves because they're on the shaded side of the tree. And on the other side, maybe I can accomplish. Yeah, sometimes I'm going to have to wait because I have to have enough value to show the contrast of values. Light is only as light as it is contrasting with something else. And I guess that's the way dark is too. We'll never see anything in its true value unless we have something to compare it with. And so as we start developing these values, we start having a better and better idea of how dark each one of them should be. And we can always continue tweaking it. I never want to go on and make all those decisions all at once because I just can't see the overall picture. Maybe some people have that wonderful ability. I would just as soon, wait and assess things and get a feel for it. As I start getting into the drawing, into the scene, into what I want to express, and have that opportunity to make those decisions along the way. Oh, I think it'd be good if this was just a tiny bit darker. Hey, I'll just do that then. And I know I can still get it off for the most part. Once in a while you get stuck, but it's nice to be able to have the control and not feel like everything, oh, I liked the drawing until I did that. Now it's just, I think I'll just throw it away. Well, most of the time you would never have to throw it away. And again, these are things that I share and always start everybody from the very beginning in the 5-pencil method. The free lessons are really good to show some of these concepts and principles, and they can hold true whether you're painting or whether you're drawing. And I think it's just a great opportunity to get some of those basic things and make sure they're a foundation to whatever you're trying to do in art afterwards, unless it is a line drawing or something. But I think that if you learn how to do some of these things and learn the principles, you can have some of the best stickmen you've ever seen, if that's all you're going to have. But anyway, those are free lessons that lay down some of these things. So I spent a lot of time on this tree, but still, I want to demonstrate that over here on this side, I'm probably going to have a lighter place. Yes, there'll be some places that are going to be a little bit dark because they go in between the leaves, just like going and looking down through the hair on a portrait. You're going to see places where there's less light down in the scalp. It's one of the things that really make it hard for people when they're drawing portraits, and they hate hair because they're always drawing a negative and don't realize that if I create some clean edges, I can actually come in there and go past and show something that's darker. I can go past if I have a nice clean edge, and I can go past that. Oh, there I'm increasing my dimension and everything. It just changes the whole equation. And it's the same thing with hair. If you have a clean edge, doesn't seem like, we should be talking about clean edges with hair, but each individual hair we can still simulate to a degree, and each one of those creates a clean edge. We want to be able to see past it, or we want it to be out in front of everything. And so it could be a clean edge as a highlight, a nice clean lighter line that we know that that's a hair that's out in front that's catching the light. And it's the same thing with these leaves. As I go, I can gradually decide what's going to be down inside the tree so that I can gradually get this darker. On this dark side, then some of these values would be maybe a little bit darker over here, because everything that goes to where there's less light would get just a little bit darker. Whether it's a dark value or a light value, whether it's a dark color or a light color, everything that goes to where there's less light would get a little bit darker. Another reason why I don't want to use up all my value all at once. Okay, so let's go ahead and clean up a few of these things here. See if we can come up with a little bit more clarity. And like this edge here was just a little bit grainy. And I think that these are places where I can spend a little bit of time and always improve my drawing. I don't care whether it's a person or a scene. I can always come in and clean up an edge if I really want to separate those dimensions and elements, at least in some way. Now I see those fence posts that there's plenty of room for a little more value. Let me just go ahead and take the opportunity to silhouette them against that background there as they get darker, probably, and darker as they go off in the distance. And anyway, this is very quick, but I hope that you can, gain some things just from us talking about it and just sketching what I can here for you, giving you the opportunity to see some of the potential of your own drawing. And as you see a scene, you can just use some of these things to make sure it is dynamic. Let's go ahead and add a little value in the whole overall drawing. Let's see if I have enough here. Let's do this. This is the same thing I would often do with hair. It has a tendency to kind of soften it up, and I don't want to have to go ahead and try and add value in everything all the time with my pencil. I like to do as much as I can with my pencil, but I also like to be able to tone down the highlights, because within highlights there are going to be highlights, if that makes any sense. And it gives me the opportunity to cast some of this extra lead into places. I want to get a little bit more in some of these areas here. Take this 2B again. That's one I'm working with. I want to see if I can create just enough value in some of these places that we can just start adding a few highlights. And it's always fun to be able to create a highlight. You can't draw a highlight. How are you going to draw a highlight? You have to have something that's going to contrast with something. So it's really a lot easier to remove something out of a tone. Just like I like doing that with highlights in the eyes. I like to create the basic structure of the eye and then take my highlight out of that darkness. And it really becomes very dynamic, and I don't have to worry about trying to draw around a highlight or something like that. I can just create it right out of the dark. But in this case, it's a little different. We're depending on where the light is hitting our subject. So and as we go around this bend, we don't see, the individual fence posts anymore, because they're all starting to look like they're on the same. They're just no space in between them anyway. And then you could go ahead and play around. This is a pretty small sketch, but it's fun to see, a little wood texture and maybe a knot, and come down here and we'll put a knot in the fence post and then have that grain going around it and everything else. Well, this just adds even more character to the drawing. And so it's really fun to be able to have that opportunity. But if I put that knot on too early, it would all be about the knot. And that's not the way I want to. Anyway, I can't help it. Create a few puns here. Okay, so now let's continue brushing in here. Just see if we can get some highlight. Now, as I brush this, I've tried to be, accurate enough that the actual detail, at least the beginning of the detail, is going to be more. It's going to stay there. Instead of me coming in trying to smear something like with a tortillon or something, even with this, if I started doing this, I'd spread I'd start seeing streaks from the fence post going all the way across. But this one doesn't really tend to interrupt the detail, and so I like it for textures and things like that. But it's going to be fun. You wait until you see what's going to happen here. I hope it does. Here I am telling you about it. And we can use our kneaded eraser. I often like to use my kneaded eraser because it has the ability to either be clean or soft. And what I've done is I've taken this and flattened one end. I usually have a point, and I have mine in a teardrop, even though this is a very poor example, because I've been using it during this demonstration. And this one is starting to get pretty dirty. It looks like it anyway, because it has a lot of graphite and everything all over it. But this teardrop is really so beneficial to me because I can pick out something and I can also do something more general. Can you see that highlight on that edge of that post? Now I realize we have a post that's probably brown or gray or whatever it happens to be, but still I have an opportunity to come up with a pretty clean edge and create that highlight and separate it even more from the background. And this is a great thing. If you wanted to, you can use some of these brand new erasers that are so good because I can come in here and I like to cut these mono zeros right off with a blade. Let's see, where's my blade? I'll lay it down firmly on the surface and I'll cut it right straight across. And that way I get to use the whole entire, by rotating this around, I get to use the whole entire edge. And I also, to do that, so I can keep rotating around, I just pull this little pocket clip off and it breaks off very easily. And then I have the chance to go all the way around and utilize that edge. But that sharp edge, boy, I'll tell you, I can do a lot with my kneaded eraser, but boy, this really gives us the opportunity to come in there very accurately and try something. Now, on my leaves, there's a few places where I might be able to go ahead and come in and say, okay, I just want a light leaf against the mountain in the back. Of course, I don't have enough on here. It's not really going to show you as much. I didn't brush up here quite as much. But still, now you can probably see that I have some value enough, even though it didn't look like it. I have some value in the meadow that's given me a chance to not only contrast with the shaded side of the post, but with the meadow itself. I hope you can see the difference in value. Now I could keep working on some of these things and create even more, but I also can come in here now and I could take maybe a clean blade of grass against the tree trunk or against the other part of the meadow and have another opportunity to create some depth and dimension. And without it becoming terribly confusing, I mean, I can have the weeds on the left side. There's not enough value there to really show you too well, but I can have the leaves on the left side, the highlighted side of the post. I can have these weeds now starting to silhouette with the value I have in the against the value that I have in the grass itself. So okay. Isn't that something? We put this wire on yesterday. I thought, wow, look at how easy it would be not to pay any attention and not have this be consistent with the perspective in our drawing. And yet this just complements the road. It's consistent, following the same principle, and helps establish perspective. Wonderful. Gives us another opportunity to not have it get lost, even though it doesn't have to be that dark. I mean, look at this. We don't see the wire here very much. It's kind of blending in. But if we wanted to just do it in little parts, maybe it's a reflection or something that we want to pull out of the scene on that wire. It doesn't have to be the picture, but it's still a consistency. Something that is consistent with the other rules that we've established in our drawing. Perspective. And we can also use it as an opportunity to separate elements or tie them together. I think most of us have seen a fence enough in our life that we can identify with this. Some of these wires are stretched and not straight. I think it's kind of nice to have a little bit of a variance in there. They can be pulled tight or they can be maybe just a little bit out of whack. But now I have all this texture. If you see, I went like this and I scribbled in, like I say, I don't often do, but maybe I can close some of those gaps. Most of the time when I'm creating something like this, and now I have an opportunity to know how much value I want in there because I want it to separate from the trees and those kinds of things. But then I have the opportunity to assess how dark this is getting so that I can indeed increase some of the value of my tree to make sure that it continues to separate. It doesn't just have to blend into the mountain. So it's very possible to, come in there and strengthen that up. Because now that I have something to compare it to, I have an opportunity to see how much value I dare put in there, at least at this stage. I can continue just tuning things up, and continuing to adjust my values and my detail, making sure that maybe a highlight isn't in an odd place and too bright. And so anyway, these are just some very general ideas with that original question that one of you responded to. What do you like about, I guess, landscapes? What do I look for? I would probably try to come, from a different direction. I like to crosshatch my mountains in different areas that are stronger. I put that quick amount of value in there, and so I don't have a chance to really demonstrate it that much. But I would probably come in from all different directions. I try to close the gaps on some of these, and that gives me the opportunity, to create a gradation in there that I can now control a lot easier than having it become something very stylized where everything's going diagonal. And then I can also then start hiding it by putting other values in different places on the mountain so that there's some variance in it a little bit too. Maybe it's going through kind of a hazy area, and it doesn't have to have all that much detail in it. But the clouds, when they're coming through, I can have my clouds coming and then ending because I can't see them anymore because of the mountain. And so this is another opportunity for us to show distance. We can't see the cloud anymore because the mountain's in the way. But it would be kind of funny if I just went up and around with my cloud and wrapped it around the mountain. That wouldn't work too well. And so anyway, I hope you've had a chance to, just pick up a few things that I might think about as I'm looking at a scene. And now I'm into this thing, I'd like to see what I could possibly do. It's hard to pull away from that drawing, even though it's very simple and we haven't had a chance to really develop it very far. It's real easy to just get absorbed into it, start feeling it, and realize the potential of it. And so I hope that there's enough that you'll have an opportunity to really, get inspired and find out what you can do. Maybe even pick up those free lessons and learn some of those very solid principles and some of those core concepts that will just give you a lot more opportunity to express yourself and have, obviously, a lot more fun drawing when you're happy with your drawing. So I'll see you in the next video, except for the fact that there is a new landscape series coming out. We just finished one in our studio class project. And if you're interested in drawing and also in particular having an opportunity to draw a scene, I think it's a great opportunity. An awful lot of people enjoy doing that. There's many of us all around the world that drew this particular subject. And it's just always fun, not only having the opportunity to draw it, but to see everybody's interpretation. And there'll probably be some of those examples in the video as well. And anyway, another opportunity to express yourself. Like I say, everywhere you go, there's an opportunity to draw. And how much more enjoyment you can have when you have the tools and the understanding of what to start looking for. So, again, see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
All right. I hope you enjoyed drawing that landscape and watching it come to life. I know I did. And, like Daryl said, he does have a series devoted specifically to drawing realistic landscapes, and in this case, taking it even further. It's not quite out yet, but it'll be out in just a couple days, and we'll be sure to send you an email with more information about that. So, thank you so much for your time. Hope you enjoyed the series. As always, be sure to give us some feedback. Just below this video, you can leave a comment, ask a question, or just say hello, whichever feels good to you. So again, thank you very much. Hope you have a great day.